Welcome to the Month End, a CPG community chat. The Month End will provide emerging CPG brands real-life knowledge into the accounting, finance, and operational worlds. Our guests will be key stakeholders from those same brands as well as other key contributors to the industry, all of which have vast experiences and insights that will be shared with the audience. Welcome to episode 8 of the Month End podcast. Really excited about having Vanessa Pham on here from Omsom. How are you doing today, Vanessa?
I'm good, Brad. Thank you for having me.
Very excited to chat about your very cool product that hasn't been in the market for 12 months. It launched kind of, I think, Q2 of last year. Omsom, great brand. What's that? When that?
May of this year, yeah. So about 9 months.
Awesome. Kind of really excited about this conversation because you launched a product during a pandemic when you weren't planning for the pandemic to happen. And you're less than 12 months old, as we've discussed. So it's kind of going to be a little different of a conversation than the other podcast interviews I've had because of your basically newness to the space and just kind of some things that you learned the last 12, 18 months since brainstorming this and processing. And actually executing and delivering on the product. So before we get started, just tell everybody about Omsom, kind of what it is, and why you launched it, and then kind of what your role is in the organization, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So Omsom is a new Asian food brand. Basically, we exist to reclaim Asian flavors and create products that honor and celebrate the communities that we represent. Our product is basically a starter, which is truly just like a pantry shortcut, almost like comparable to like a simmer sauce or a taco seasoning in its use case, but you can create your favorite Asian dishes in under 30 minutes with like just a handful of fresh ingredients. And we like we said, we launched in May of this year. And so just a young company that's been in the market for 9 months, but have learned so much and had a lot of great, exciting things kind of happen to us early in our journey. As far as myself, I'm the CEO and co-founder. So I run a lot of different things at Omsom. So product and R&D in my wheelhouse. I manage and own a lot of the kind of operations, supply chain, logistics, manufacturing. And then I also do kind of like finance, fundraising, strategy, and then lastly, performance marketing. So pretty much everything that's not creative, I do at the company. And we're a small team. We're 4 people full-time right now.
Awesome. Well, we're going to talk about finance, accounting, operations. So it sounds like I'm got the right person on the phone line here. And by the way, anybody to check it out, go to omsom.com. Their branding's great. Their product's great. So kudos to you on the marketing and branding side of things. Love your colors. Love your kind of whole brand here. All right. So let's get started out. So where do you sell your product, and what was your go-to, I guess, market plan when you started 12 months ago, and then maybe how the COVID pandemic impacted that, if at all?
Yeah, so basically what our business looks like today and what it's looked like for the most part has been D2C first. So literally probably 99% of our sales have been completely through our website. And actually that was always the plan because we are not a transactional brand. We're brand before product. We really seek to build a relationship with all of our customers. We always wanted to go D2C first because there's so much room to really tell that story. And so that was actually pretty lucky. There were a lot of things that were kind of difficult about the pandemic, but one thing I will say is that we're super lucky that we were always planning on going to D2C and didn't have to kind of pivot or launch in grocery and have a hard time at the beginning, which I know was true for many brands. So that's been our business to date. Looking forward, we definitely have plans to meet more customers IRL through wholesale, but we're still in the very early journey and we've had a lot of interest, but we've kind of been letting that sit to the side while we just focus on D2C. And yeah, I guess in terms of changes though with the pandemic, the only major change I would say in terms of our go-to-market was our kind of IRL community building plan. That was going to be like a huge part of who we are, like really getting people together, helping facilitate connections and community beyond kind of just through the Omsom product. But I think with the pandemic, that basically all of that went to shit.
For
And
sure.
which was tough. I mean, we had rented out actually a physical space, like a kitchen space that could host like 20 people. And we signed up for a year lease on that, and we just had to like kind of eat that. And it ended up being okay because we had to create a lot of content in the pandemic ourselves, and so we just made it in that kitchen, so
Cool.
that was fine. But there were some kind of snafus like that.
Interesting. Yep. You gotta had to reuse some of your asset and resource spend during the whole situation there.
Yeah.
From a Shopify direct to consumer sales channel, like what specific metrics are you looking at from maybe not just from a marketing standpoint, sales standpoint, but also just from an overall kind of margin, financial, accounting related aspect?
Hmm. Yeah, so I think it's hard, I think a lot of D2C brands look at similar things. I think the context that I'll give here is like our strategy as a brand is pretty different than other venture-backed D2C brands. I think more and more we're seeing more brands start to care more about operational efficiency early on. But I think for us, we have cared about it from like day one, and it's been a core KPI for us from day one for many reasons. I think it's just a more healthy, sustainable model. I think it has a lot to do with kind of like, I think your main objective at the end of the day, like a lot of D2C founders are like, okay, let me just like really grow this super quickly. Like, let's see that top line balloon up, and then I can like turn it and sell it super quickly, which I understand that's an approach that lots of founders like to take. But I think more and more we're seeing that not always pan out as expected. And I also think us being mission driven, we want to have as much control of this company as we can so that we can continue to make the decisions that we want in service of our community. And so to that end, operational efficiency early on has been kind of core for us. So that's why we care deeply about contribution margin when it comes to paid, which is just a super like a small part of our business right now, only 10%. That even with that, we're trying to be profitable on the first order. So like anything after that is just additive, which is like pretty aggressive. But I think that's been a KPI that's been really important to us versus like a lot of other brands will choose to look from like a CAC versus LTV perspective and be like, oh, well, like we'll make it back on the third order. Like that's not
Yeah.
an approach that we like to take. And then even in terms of organic growth, we've been really investing in organic growth, which is what has allowed us to kind of grow this much with the operational efficiency that we have had. It'll definitely not be that way forever, but in the shorter term, that's kind of been the approach. And then also longer term, we just think that that's just a good place to be going from. And we have like really good data as far as like, I think just seeing the resonance that we have with folks because we haven't bought them as customers. So yeah, I would say to summarize, on the paid side, ROAS, in terms of product, like contribution margin and like trying to find efficiencies in our supply chain has been super important. A lot of food brands also are like, when we scale, it'll look a lot better. Like
Mhm.
we weren't like that. We were just like, okay, early on, like we want to see this make sense and like we want to see it get better over time. But like it needs to start from a place of making sense as a business.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that has to do with my background in consulting at Bain. Like I definitely have like have seen a lot of companies try to clean that up after the fact, and it can be kind of hard. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's very, very fascinating, interesting. Clearly, like from my perspective, I see a ton of different life cycles and decisions that were made along the way, whether it was, hey, my most important thing is grow top line, grow brand equity, get it out there, and we'll fix it later. I do think at the end of the day, from being a direct to consumer, the coolest thing from my perspective, direct to consumer, is you get to control your voice, your message, and your margins for the most part in terms of where it is, and you don't have that distribution deductions and things like that, the middleman that takes a lot of that out of the way. And in doing so, I really think that to be super successful, be focused on operational efficiencies and contribution margin up front. It really helps you make good decisions on the road. And if you focus on creating that community and trying to get those folks that believe in your product, those are the ones that are the most loyal long term versus paying them or basically paying for them and then then seeing it as more of a transaction. So it's fascinating. I've seen various clients that we have both ways. They both can work, but it's interesting to see where you're at on that perspective. In terms of your sales channels moving forward from direct consumer, you said you're moving into wholesale. You have the last couple of months from our previous conversations. What is your kind of role there? Like regional, national? Is there a specific plan with that, and why are you guys targeting that?
Yeah, for sure. So, on the wholesale side of things, I think the way that we've seen our business, like even from our, like, let's say first pitch to investors, I think in food, like maybe the pandemic has like shifted this a little bit, but even still, like when you're really looking at like where the volume and the big kind of like big chunks of growth come from, we really do believe at the end of the day that'll still be in wholesale. And so because that was kind of always part of the plan of like D2C kind of being this launch pad into wholesale. So in the ways that we see it now, like we are more viewing our entry into wholesale as like a testing and learning phase. So there's a lot that needs to, evolve in terms of our product and our packaging to be successful in wholesale, which we know because we designed our product fully for D2C. So we don't like, we can sit here and try to guess what that is, which we're doing, but we also want to start to get like real feedback from customers. And so our first phase of wholesale is very much just like finding partners that will be willing to work with us, like give us that feedback, and maybe some environments that we feel like are a little bit more aligned with what our current product is, which is like more giftable environments or like less transactional, like pure kind of like high volume grocery types of partners. That's what it's going to look like in the short term. But I think in the longer term, the goal is to use those learnings, iterate our retail proposition, and then move into more like high volume grocery a little bit down the road. So yeah, I think it's really just driven from a place of like, that's where the volume is really happening when it comes to food.
Yes, definitely. Cool. Well, I think that kind of puts a bow on that aspect because you're focused on contribution margin, operational efficiency. I'm very fascinated about this kind of next conversation point around supply chain inventory. So, give me a little bit of high level of your supply chain or what you did to create your supply chain, who you partnered with, why you partnered, and kind of go through that phase from your perspective and why you made some decisions to really be able to focus on down the line operational efficiency, supply chain efficiencies to kind of focus on those KPIs that you just discussed earlier.
For sure. Yeah. So, I think it's funny. I think our supply chain is probably not the area where we're getting the efficiency, just because our product is so bespoke and our bar is so high on product. I think the efficiencies are more coming on the marketing side of things, if I'm being honest. Like I know that our like percentage, like if you take our marketing spend as a percentage of our revenue, that number is like, whoa, you don't really see that often, basically. So I think our supply chain by choice is probably not the area where it's really coming from, just because of our approach to product. However, I can still definitely talk about it. I think like so basically our supply chain is like we source a bunch of our ingredients directly from Asia and specifically from the countries that the dish is from. Like that's the bar that we have. So it's like most brands are like, oh, we need a chili. Let's get a chili flake. Ours is like, well, is it a Thai chili that we need? Is it a Korean chili? Is it a Chinese chili? Because we source like 4 different kinds of chili. So we're bringing a lot of those specialty ingredients in directly from Asia, working with suppliers that have no other brand partners in the US. Like that's how kind of bespoke that is. We produce all our products in the US on the West Coast. And then we work with a 3PL on the East Coast to ship that out. So already there's a little bit of inefficiency right there, right? Like why is that? We thought we would have like most of our customers in this area, and it turns out like pretty quickly nationally we had customers all over. So that is an area where I'm like, okay, we'll probably have to like improve that at some point. But that's like broadly what it looks like. And in terms of getting this all set up, pretty early on in our journey, pre-launch, we did partner with Rodeo CPG, and they've been like a great kind of friend of our brand. They're definitely part of like the Omsom family, and they definitely helped us fill in a lot of the gaps and like put a lot of structure around like building it. Because I mean, you can imagine like I have experience working with CPGs in terms of like retail strategy and growth strategy at Bain, but not like building a supply chain from scratch, which is even
Yep.
different than optimizing the supply chain. So
Right.
they were great partners for that. And yeah, I mean, I've learned so much on this front.
I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did. In terms of as you manage your inventory, let's say in supply chain, like is there certain how do you control your inventory in terms of how do you know what you have on hand when you have to reorder? If you're buying a ton of different raw materials and have a very customer bespoke product and supply chain, there's a lot of moving parts that go on. So is there a lot of continuous reviewing of inventory weekly, daily? Like what does that process just look like from just a pure execution standpoint?
Yeah, so basically we look at our inventory pretty much weekly. And it is definitely something that is a big focus of ours, especially because like we are growing quickly, and so we do need to be really like nimble on this front. I wouldn't say we have this down perfectly, mostly just because we underestimated the demand for our product, just because we have been lean on marketing. We didn't necessarily expect to cut through the noise and have the resonance we did. So we've sold out like 5 times since we launched, which is
Mm,
like partially like, wow, great demand, partially
yeah.
like, oh gosh, we need to like figure out how to
Yep.
predict this better. And I think because most of our growth has been organic, that's like really hard to predict. Like with paid, it's like you put this in, you get this out.
Yep.
With organic, it's just not like that, of course. It's a black box. So it's been a challenge. But because of the traction that we've gotten. So yeah, it's a weekly process. We are looking at potentially putting in place an inventory management system because we have a lot of moving parts and because our structure with our like manufacturing partners like it is not turnkey
Gotcha.
because our ingredients are like sourced really like they're very bespoke and they're specialty. Like there's not really like a manufacturing partner out there that can be like, oh yeah, let me just like find
Mhm.
my to call up my supplier, lemongrass supplier from Vietnam. Like that's not really a thing. So it's more complex. It definitely we want to move towards putting in place an inventory management system when we have the partners that we believe will be putting in the right inputs to that, but we're not there yet.
Awesome. Awesome. And 100% makes sense. So right now you're just leveraging reports, Excel, Google Sheets, and just kind of managing it that way, right?
Yes.
As you guys have grown very quickly, what is your like how have you like staffed up in terms of 12 months ago, you, your sister, whoever was involved, like how have you staffed up in terms of just focusing and supporting operations and inventory supply chain or just internal initiatives and marketing and just kind of how have you looked at that from a need standpoint as well as like looking at it from a budgetary standpoint?
Yeah. So to your, I mean, to our points earlier around like trying to be operationally efficient, I think the approach that we've taken in general is like I would say a couple of key pillars. I guess one is like not hiring then growing into it, but like hiring when it's like pressing and we need it, which is like pros and cons for sure. Even with like our hiring plan, we've just really invested in younger, like hungry, super talented, mission aligned people that have good experience, but aren't like, we're not hiring like, like how people get like, they raise around and they're like, let's get those like sexy hires, like the X away, the X Casper people. Like we don't do that. So that's like one approach or one piece of our approach. And then I think, so that's kind of what it's looked like. So basically, let's say 12 months ago, it was like me, my sister, and our marketing director as the core kind of full-time team. And then we had Rodeo supporting us. And now it's just one more person. So we're four. We
Mhm.
brought on a chief of staff to kind of help me. And what we have done is built out a kind of core group of like awesome contractors that support us. And the reason we've done this is like it's just really flexible, and then you can like tap the people who are actually experts at specific things versus trying to make this small team learn everything. So
Mhm.
we kind of work as like the core group that advocates for Omsom's means, Omsom's goals, our brand, how we show up in the world, and we communicate that and manage like a handful of contractors that help us with specific things when they're important to us at different parts in our journey.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it's, like I'm always big into outsourcing. I feel like when I discuss with clients or anybody about like, do I need to hire this? It's like, is this position like required of 40-hour a week job? Like if you kind of look at it and analyze like from just the amount of time and energy that people spend on not value added items, it's like, can I identify an experienced and knowledgeable resource in this specific function, hire them on a variable manner, and then I can scale up. And when I really see that I need a full-time person or somebody more in that role, hire them and just keep it lean and hire late. I enjoy that, especially in your first 12 months as a business owner. I think it's very smart to do that versus hiring way too many people. And I think your investors will enjoy that too, from just a cash burn perspective, which again, I've seen both sides of the spectrum there. That's great. And then in terms of, last kind of questions related to like, financial reporting, KPIs review. Clearly, Omsom's a client of Accountfully. We love working with you. But how in your very background is finance, accounting, operations? So you get all this stuff, right? How often are you like reviewing cash, finances, reports in terms of just be on your own and analyzing them just from that aspect? Because that can be from a small business owner, that can be like, you could do it too much because you get into the day-to-day so much, but otherwise, like what's your practice related to that, especially with your background from being kind of in the consulting world?
Yeah, I think that the key thing here is that basically I spend way less time doing that than I would like to. I think, I love that stuff. Like I geek out on that stuff. Like that's what I would want to. I'd want to like cut the data a bunch of ways all the time. Like that would be so fun for me to understand my business inside out. But I just don't really have the bandwidth to do that with a small team. I'm very much like an operator first, and then like an analyzer and an optimizer second. At this point, we're still in the 0 to 1 of the business. So, but yeah, even still, we definitely have a lot of process in place to make sure we have a good handle on like how things are going and how we're tracking against our goals and how they can improve. So we have a weekly sales meeting where we look at a bunch of different cuts of data based on our financials. We have a monthly budget meeting where we like look at our budget versus actuals and have those conversations. And then, yeah, I would say those are like the main things we upkeep. And beyond that, like it's basically if there's a problem, I will dig in. And then whenever we receive our financial package from you all, of course, like we dig in and we take a look too. So that's kind of what it looks like from a cadence perspective.
Awesome. It seems like every answer and everything that you've done at Omsom is basically like very well thought through, and you try to think like, well, what is the best way to do this, or what is that, and you'll like screw that. So I kudos to you on that aspect. It seems like you're a planner and then an implementer and then an executor, and then once you get in the role, you're 12 months in. Now it's just like, hey, I got to figure out what to do, and then you kind of prioritize things and delegate and create again. So kudos to all that, and kudos to your growth. The last 12 months. And again, I love your branding. So as we wrap up, as we do with all of our guests, I want to kind of discuss one do and one don't for fellow kind of, brand owners, especially you. And again, the 0 to 1 age, like what is the one do that essentially you would definitely recommend to other folks?
This is really, okay, let's see. I would say, what has been? I would say do over invest in your positioning and your values, like as in from a time perspective, like do over invest in really understanding that and how that flows into your vision for your company. Because if you have that down pat, meaning you know what y'all stand for, you know who you're speaking to, like who you're speaking to now and what that looks like in 5 years and how that evolves, that will be so much easier to make decisions that will move you harmoniously in one direction. Mm-hmm. But I think if you don't have that clear, you can like make decisions like in a place that feels like less strategic and less will get you less momentum. I really believe in like both on the ops and marketing side, there's momentum in your decision making, and that will help you like unlock more and more value over time. And I think like that's one thing that we've been really focused on like early on, is making sure we have a very clear handle on like kind of who we are, what we stand for, what that shows up like in the world year 1, year 2, year 3, and hopefully, many more years.
Yeah, and I think that that's illustrated by your our conversation here, your branding, and just kind of knowing you the last kind of year. So, all right, one don't. What is one thing that you would change or not recommend to fellow CPG brand owners, team players?
Let's see. Don't. I'm trying to think of like places
So
where.
you've never messed up, Vanessa?
No, but definitely. I'm thinking of all the different oh, I know. I would say don't don't undervalue the partners that you have specifically in your supply chain. Meaning like, okay, you think you just buy flour or like, salt from this company, whatever, like you can just place that order and that's it. I would say like in general, it's really important to build like person to person relationships with every partner that you have on all sides of your business. I feel like that's always like often gets forgotten, is the backbone of a CPG business. So like take the time to like get to know the person that runs your co-manufacturer, the person that helps, like the distributor that helps you access certain ingredients or something. Like those people are going to be the people that like save you when you're in a pinch, or they're going to be the people that like show up for you when like there was a big disaster on the manufacturing floor and like somebody's got to take the cost, right? So yeah, I would say just like really like in a very genuine way build those relationships.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic insight there. I think at the end of the day, especially with the way society's been the last 12 months with quarantine and technology and Zoom, it's like it does go back to human relationships and creating those relationships and those bonds with your partners, because these folks are your partners, and there is going to be things happening where product doesn't arrive on time or arrives incorrectly, or you messed up and they need to save the day for you. Well, guess what? If they know you and they know you personally, it literally helps that out to get resolved in a much more kind of expedited manner. So awesome. Well, really appreciate all of that insight, Vanessa. Again, everybody go out to omsom.com, check out their packaging, buy their product. What is your favorite, or what's kind of new? Like what is like for folks to learn about your brand? Like what should they buy or what should they try?
I would say so the Omsom bundle is kind of like our hero product. That's like the best introduction to like what we're all about. So I definitely recommend that if you're kind of a first time customer. And then if you're coming back to stock up on your favorites, we have like 3 packs of individual flavors, and those are like what people, when they really want to like double down on their favorites, they go there. So yeah, definitely check out the Omsom bundle to start.
Awesome. And even a starter cook who doesn't know how to cook can leverage this to
Oh
make a
yeah,
great meal.
this is like the type of thing that it's like lifesaver for many folks that don't know how to cook. It'll like really save you.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, Vanessa, I really appreciate it. And thanks again and for everybody out there, episode 8 here of the month end with Vanessa from Omsom. Hope you all enjoyed it. Have a good day.
Thank you.